Oh, hi.
Hello.
I didn't see you there.
Hello.
Twitch and YouTube chat. It's a show on the internet. What are we, what up? It's time for Scope Check, episode number 2. Hi, I'm Tom.
Hello.
Hi,
And I got
Tom.
my glasses on because we're getting technical.
My goodness.
Do we have technical Tom in the house today?
Actually, we have technical Tom, who's just kind of
See, I
like
actually
regular
need-
Tom, but I wear these glasses until they bother my eyes. So,
I'm glad that you pointed out that you were the same person because, as is the rules of superheroes,
Right.
would not have recognized you otherwise.
Glasses
Yeah,
change
I'm-
you, man.
totally in disguise. Different person for the show. I had to make sure that I transformed. And honestly, I can't take these off until I find a phone booth somewhere.
Otherwise, people might recognize you, you know?
Right. I don't really know what my plan was for this intro, but I guess this is it. So we're here. This is Scope Check. For those that don't know what the show is about, this might be your first time tuning in. We jump in together and we're making a game. Hopefully, we're going to make a game with the community in 8 weeks. It's a casual game. And I guess we should introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Tom. I work here at Unity as a technical marketing advocate on the education team. And immediately to my left is Joy.
Oh man, you introduced like left and right. Now I'm ruined. I was going like backwards and stuff. To one side of Tom is Joy. Hello. It is me. I am Joy. I am a senior instructional designer on the Learn team. That means that my team handles everything that is on Unity Learn. So if you enjoy any of the learning pathways or any of the tutorials on there, you're welcome. Also, the rest of my team takes a lot of credit as well. It's just not me. Can you imagine? Not me creating
all
of Unity
Joy.
Learn. It's all me.
It's 100% Joy. Like 2 a.m., she's just grinding, writing that code, making those tutorials.
It was so hard to get her to
I
join the
wish that was
stream.
true.
She was like, I need to be working on Learn.
She was, but we got her just long enough to do this. And somebody else who needs to be working all the time, but he took some time away. So tell the people about yourself.
My name is Utsav. I'm a technical product manager at Unity. I used to be a game developer, and I wanted to see if my skills still, you know, they stand the test of time or not. So this stream will hopefully shed some light on that.
So now that we've got introductions out of the way, as per the run of show, first of all, I want to say hello to the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. I do have both up so we can see both of you in real time, which is super exciting. Also, we see one of our other instructional designers, Aaron, in the chat saying that he also works on Learn. Yet to be seen. We'll find out. Proof is in the pudding, I guess. So the first thing we need to do for this show, every episode we committed to, is actually checking the scope of what we're working on. And so to do that, we need to look at the game design document that we worked on off stream and to rehash what we did last week to go over things. So if our wonderful producer could go to the feed where y'all can see my screens, we can jump in and we can show y'all what we're doing. So scope check. So first of all, I named the school where the cafeteria is. We can change the name if we want to, but for some reason the name Beat Snack really stuck to me. It was like they're beatniks, but they want snacks, so they're snacky beatniks. I don't know. It just hit my brain. So we got Beat Snack High. And you know, life at Beat Snack High was always challenging, but never as challenging as that fateful day. You know, the one where all those monsters just showed up demanding food. So the monsters are hungry. You're going to feed them to survive. We're locked in the isometric 3D world of Beat Snack High's cafeteria. A sudden outbreak of hungry monsters occurs. Players must stay alive by feeding monsters food found in the world. The hungrier they get, the more likely they are to eat you instead of tacos. So that's our premise now for the game. That's our pitch, is what we came up with.
The elevator pitch. I like it.
Okay. So, scope-wise, we got our multiplayer, 2-player cooperative. Players are going to work together to fight off the hordes of monsters. This is going to be a wave-based game, and the end screen is going to show who defeated more monsters via food, right?
Yes, correct.
We're stuck in the
Wave gaming.
waves.
Yep. And so we implemented this specifically, and I think we met yesterday. Cattail. We implemented.
Hi everybody, this is Pen. He will be interrupting the stream a lot because that's how we do. So now you know this is Pen.
Pen, official co-star. So with the, we thought it'd be really fun to add some kind of like light competitiveness to the game, right? And so it wouldn't be too big of a reach to tabulate which player fed the most zombies or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end we can show who scored higher, basically, is kind of the plan there.
and it's super casual, right? It doesn't
Right.
affect the outcome of the game. It's just for you and your partner.
It's just for bragging rights, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to
There's
make
no,
sure
like-
Most
you have
importantly.
bragging rights. Yes.
Absolutely.
Someone says I thought it was netcode multiplayer, and yes, it is netcode multiplayer. Oh, so this is a fun question. So Freeman said, "I'm really intrigued to know if ChatGPT would have generated a better game design document." So, fun fact, I actually took that premise and dumped it into ChatGPT and told it to generate me a game design document, and we actually have that as another file. I also then took it the next step and I said, hey, okay, cool, what systems do I need to build? And it generated a systems list for me. Somebody asking if the game will be released. We're going to put it on like WebGL so people can play it, but we're not going to like release it commercial or anything. This is really like an educational experiment of like, how do we go about stuff and what we'd figure out and can we actually do this? So this is not meant for like big explosions or whatever.
But you
All
will
right.
have access to it. Like, we're going to
Yes.
make sure that you're going to be able to play whatever we come up with.
Totally, yep. All right, so then gameplay, right? So this is the working title is food-based game dev. ChatGPT actually created the title for us as well. It was kind of funny. It was something like, it was called like Beat Snack High Cafeteria Chaos, I think is what it named it, which is a pretty good name. So looking at this though, you know, I really think this should play similar to like a Smash TV or Overcooked, or I linked some other inspirational games like The Ascent, Mighty Doom, Tom versus the Armies of Hell. That one's an inspiration because my name's in it and it says one of my favorite words. But like all of those are kind of like those top-down twin stick shooter, chaotic, right? Like you're just going quick and heavy and and I think we all kind of agreed on that in our meeting. I might have taken the lead a little heavily
Yeah.
there, but I think that's kind of what we all thought was good.
Yeah, but a little less stressful than Overcooked, right? Because
Right.
Overcooked has caused many fights and many relationships. I'd like to avoid that.
Feeding
I'm glad
monsters
to know
will
I'm not
bring
the only
people
one.
together.
Yeah, not pull them apart.
Overcooked does not, because I am a chaos gremlin and Anna, my lovely partner, is a very meticulous time manager. And when you put those two things together to create a food cooking situation under pressure, you get chaos. So yeah, it was not good. So with the gameplay loop, 1 to 2 player co-op online modes, monsters will spawn in waves inside the environment, finding their way towards the players. Players must feed them until they are out of food. When they run out of food, which is the ammo, they're actually gonna have to run to like a reload station and get food. So there'll be like fridges they get food out of. And then they will run back and fight. They'll have limited health as they are assailed by waves of creepy but cute assassins. And then when the player's life bar hits 0, they're out of play until the game restarts. And when all the players in the session are at health 0, the level ends. Final score is tabulated, and they're given another chance to fight the wave. So that's kind of our basic gameplay loop we've documented here. And then I actually made this little diagram in a Google Jamboard. So we have our timer, like a start, and then we have a timer countdown, and then go. We go to the combat phase, right? When health is less than or equal to 0, we're going to go to game over. Then they're going to be able to quit and go back to the title screen, or they're going to restart. And this is kind of our basic flow diagram of how things are going to work.
Pretty straightforward. I
Yes.
like it.
So that
Scope
really
check.
should have been a lucid chart.
Hey, I was wondering the same thing. I've never used Jamboard on Google, so if we're using that, I'm gonna need to.
We can use a lucid chart. I just picked the first option in my Google Drive that let me draw squares and put text inside the squares. Like I am not committed to a product here. So
I learn
Those
new
arrows are not on an arc. I don't understand this image at all.
So I tried to like document it here. Title screen, start, combat, game over, combat, or title. So that's kind of our rough. The characters. So our main character might be wearing like a hot dog on a stick uniform. There's a good get about, stick dog. This one might need to get scope checked only because I don't know that we're going to have the resources to create that, but we can look into it. So we'll look into that and see. I did a quick demo of our enemies. So we pulled a bunch of Kenny and L assets. We actually purchased the commercial pack from Kenny for $20, which is amazing. Huge value, great value. So we have that. We have pizza, we have hot dogs, we have tacos, and then we have some zombies, and then we have some of these blocky monsters from Kenny as well. And I don't think I think we're leaning more towards the blocky monsters instead of the full 3D ones, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that will come down to, I think where we left off in the discussion is making sure that the silhouettes are clear enough that it's going to be easy for our players to identify the different enemies.
Right.
But look at that Skellington. I really love the Skellington. He's
so
just so
great.
great.
I know. But also,
And-
I think I remember characters also had full animations, and I don't know if that was something that we were concerned about.
Yeah, so the
That's another
3D
factor.
there's not as many animated characters from Kenny, right? Like there's only like 10 animated characters. All the other ones we'd have to animate. That
There
being
you go.
said, sorry, you're gonna have to see my alt tabs real quick. I did. Let's see. Let's go to our prototype scene. So I did make a quick and dirty animation of our skeleton. So if we like frame, well, we can just do this and then just look at him in the scene view once we go to play mode.
He's
But like
so
I did
cute.
make like a quick and dirty like animation like this. So he does have a basic walk that we created in the engine in like 20 minutes.
Not the pizza exploding in the background.
No, that's another thing that we're experimenting with. If y'all want to see that, I got like y'all are gonna have to keep me on task because I get derailed really easily, and so I actually spent way more time than any reasonable person should making this happen. So let me show y'all what happens. Actually, let me show you the better way to demo it. If I turn it off and turn it back on, we can watch it explode in real time. Meow.
Kaboosh.
So if we go to our pizza, is it this pizza? No, where's the pizza? I think I named it like Pizza Bomb. Yeah, here we go. So if we look at this, we'll turn it off and then we'll turn it on because I don't have it set up to work with scripts. Oh, and we'll actually talk about why we're using this version of Unity. So now if I turn it on, oh, look at that. Some of the particle effects aren't lining up right. So the general idea with this was like you throw the pizza and then it like detonates and that feeds some and then all the slices fly off like rockets and feed more. Anyway, so that's where we're at with the setup here. And then the enemies, so we're thinking we got vampires that fly, they move slower, and they still maybe steal health from the player, so maybe they heal or something, get more hungry as they eat blood, I don't know. Skeletons are slower moving enemies that do higher damage output, and then zombies are going to be like our trash mobs, right, that are fast but like low health or low hunger. And then weapon-wise, we got tacos, hot dogs, pies, and sandwiches. They'll all kind of function the same. And the only thing that'll be different will be the pizza, which is going to be like that second weapon, like your B attack, right? Where you get like a limited number of them. You yeet the pizza, it hits, it detonates, and feeds everybody. And then I got to world aesthetic because Joy actually brought this up in our design meeting yesterday. So maybe you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact that our glorious group on Twitch and YouTube voted for us to have an isometric view opened up a lot of doors in my mind. One thing that I really love is the diorama aesthetic, which is incredibly popular on Sketchfab, which allowed me to like point out some examples for everybody. So I floated the idea that perhaps one way we could approach the visual aspect of the game is to have kind of like an actual diorama look and feel, where the cafeteria is kind of its own little world floating in space. And so it's kind of like the top image where like, you know, you'll see like kind of doorways coming in, and then like the enemies will spawn in as if they were coming in from another room in another dimension. So that's kind of the thought. And also the cell phone was just so aesthetic, and I really had to like point it out. So that's why it's full of it's so pretty.
We just thought these characters were so cute. Like we spent like 20 minutes just like Googling over how cute these characters are here. But yeah, like couldn't agree more, right? I think that diorama vibe is really going to fit this game really, really well.
Yeah, I think just the way kind of, Overcooked styles, there's some Overcooked levels that also have a similar kind of art style and theme to it. I think it's just really well fitted for our game.
Yeah.
Yep.
We actually had a funny moment where, like, when I was remembering Overcooked, I was thinking about, like, the kitchen, like, the classic first levels.
Yep.
And then Utsav was talking about, like, one of the other levels that was very diorama-like, and we're like this? And we're like, yeah, like this. I'm like, but we're talking about different things. And then Tom just pulled up, like, the Overcooked website, and they were both side by side. I'm like, oh.
So yeah, this is going to be kind of our game environment aesthetic, right? Like not a construction field, but like you'll be looking down onto the cafeteria. It's going to be here. And then one of the other thoughts we had was the enemies will probably spawn on the outskirts, and there'll be kind of a little bit of a maze they'll work through to get into the middle. And then the middle will definitely be more of an open combat ground with like maybe some tables and stuff to distract them that we can work around. So we'll definitely be using nav meshes to build that out. I like nav meshes, so that'll be nice and fun, and we can use some of the basic features to really get quick with it. Okay, so that being said, we've kind of covered everything. So I guess the question we have to ask ourselves with this scope check is, do we feel confident so far that we can do this in 6 more streams?
I think so.
I think so too. But I think all projects start that way for me. I think I can do it in the timeline that I, tell myself I want to build it in.
Start out with confidence, and then a few weeks in, you're like, oh.
So generally what happens is one thing comes up that you spend too much time on, and you realize that you don't have time for other things. So, I'm going to keep that in mind as I start building stuff. If I run into issues, I'm going to stop, change my focus, and maybe, hit you guys up for some help if that happens,
Yep.
I think that's a great idea, because I think one of the things we're going to focus on in building this is we're going to pick stuff that we haven't done before, right?
Yep.
Like systems we haven't worked on or game things we haven't done before. So like that will actually be really nice, because if you do get too stuck and one of us has done those other things, then like the support will be a lot better, right? So I think that's a really good strategy in both angles. So yeah. All right. So we've checked the scope and we feel like we're good. We feel like we're comfortable in the scope. I feel pretty good. Like so far I feel pretty good. Like even just like building out that basic pizza thing only took me like an hour and a half, right? And that was with like a lot of weird little hiccups and also getting distracted by Slack messages and Twitter posts. So like I think we'll be good. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about, let's talk about the tech we're going to use to build this thing out. And we already had a question about it. So we're going to use Unity 2021 LTS, which is 2023. I think our specific version is 2021.3.22 F1. Because at the time, that was the latest version of Unity I had installed on my machine that wasn't 2022, right? And so instead of going to 2020, like instead of going to like I think .23 or .24, we are like, well, 2020 .22 is already there. Let's use that.
Yep.
There wasn't a ton of technical reasoning behind it, other than, oops, I just dropped down this. Let me pull this up. Other than, we want to use an LTS version, a stable version that everyone has access to.
Right.
And so using the latest LTS made sense to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that was basically it.
It's always best practice when you're starting on a new game development or any kind of development in Unity, if you know that the project is going to be bigger than maybe like a weekend jam or something, to go with an LTS, because it's going to be the most stable of the group. There aren't any like experimental features. Obviously, you could. Long story, but the point of the matter is that LTS is our stable version, and that's why you always want to go to it when you are planning on working on something for a while.
And another thing I'll add to that is LTS also is the version that gets the most bug resolutions backported to it, if there are bug resolutions that come out ahead. So LTS is the way to go.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that's our plan. There wasn't like a technical feature reason other than like we're comfortable with it. We know it's stable. Everything works there. Someone asking, so yeah, we're gonna have snakes with clown heads in this game, right?
That's exactly what I was looking at. That's why I was like sitting here giggling.
Trust me, the whole time designing this doc in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna get one somehow. Like if I have to reach out to like an artist on our team and be like,
we need to contact Kenny. Stat,
Kenny, we need you. Yeah, the Unity content team might be hearing from me this weekend of like, hey, bro, how do I get a little snake head? Anyway, get a little snake head clown action to scare Utsav. So. That being said, we need to talk about version control next.
I thought we were over that. Sorry,
no,
I just wanted
never.
to say we were over that.
You ever heard of running bits?
Like,
no,
seriously, by the end of the stream, we're going to just be cutting up pieces of us referring to your ultimate fears.
I regret my decisions.
So that being said, we decided on version control. So we're going to do it two ways. So we're going to use internally, we're going to use Unity DevOps. For our version control, right? Because it has editor integration. And what I mean by that is I can literally go window, Unity version control, and boom, like our project is right here. We can push pull right from the editor. That being said, this doesn't have a way that I know of to do a public facing page that y'all can get to. And so we are going to be pushing all of our work to GitHub as well. So we do have a GitHub link. And that's another reason actually why we're going to be using the commercial Kenny assets or assets from Learn. So that it's stuff we know that we can share on GitHub so that y'all have access to it and can work with it. So yeah, that's kind of the plan there. But yeah, so we'll be using, so all the checking in you'll see us doing in the stream is going to be through Unity version control. And then we'll be using GitHub to push publicly so that y'all can get to it and access the content and mess with it and see what we did.
Yeah, and this is actually going to be really exciting for me because this is going to be the first project where I'm actually using plastic in the editor. I've experimented around a little bit before, but never a full production. So this is going to be a really great way to field test this little piece of tech that we have now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like actually get us really, really comfortable using it. Because I've used it for small projects. I've used it for like some small collaboration stuff, but I've never used it for like something completely end to end. So I'm really stoked to jump on this.
I've used Burfos for I've used Burfos for a similar thing, and that can have its tricky things. So I'm hoping Plastic is a much better experience because it's ours.
Yeah, it'll be fun to document those tricky things we run into, and so far it's been really good for us. Like early on, it's been really easy and really great.
Yep.
It is full screen, buddy. So it's been really, really great so far. I think things are working awesome. I see what he means. So yeah, we're good there. So sometimes you're going to see me wander in my brain and just talk to production in my head because that's the kind of person I am. So professionalism out the window. So now that we have this set, we've done that. Let's go take a look. Chat has not dove in on us too hard. Yes, we're good there. Let's go look at, we got that. Okay. So our next step is we need to establish our coding conventions for this project, I believe. So let me pull up my page here and we'll go to our technical design doc, which is very thorough right now. It's got a little poop emoji over here and it's got TDD start. So we're way ahead of the game. So
Professionalism.
Technical design doc or food-based game dev. We'll just start with that. And let's talk about like coding. What's coding style guide?
Yeah.
I don't know what to call this.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, pretty standard, like all private variables, start lowercase, right? Camel case for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Feels weird to see both of those words in caps.
Right? Strange. Should I write it? Let me actually just fix that. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Actually, let me just do this too so that it's contextually accurate. There we go. Okay, great. So now we're there. Let's talk about naming. So here's something I've been thinking about, and this might be something that's like really in the weeds, but it's from like when I got my certification and went through a bunch of the certification content with Jeremy Gibson Bond. How you doing, man? Hope you're well. So he did this thing that I thought was really interesting. So whenever he had like a static accessor, I guess the way to describe it. So like say we do a game manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would do like, so say we had like, private game manager instance, right? And then you do like public game manager. Oh my gosh. Trying to type this in a Word doc feels weird. So then it would be like this for the public. It would be all caps.
Okay.
How do we feel about that? Or do we just want to have it be lowercase and then uppercase?
Mm-mm.
I don't think I've ever done shouty code if it's outside of a comment.
Outside of a comment? Like, you mean you write shouty comments?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time. And it's mostly directed at myself. How could you do this? What does this mean?
I like, could we call it shouty case? Like, do we want to shouty case our stuff? I'm looking at what Twitch chat says. There's got to be people with opinions in Twitch chat on this.
Okay, fair. I'll take those
See?
opinions.
This is an instance!
It's very good. A+. If we're gonna add, if we're doing chaotic code, I think it's time that I pull out a little gem from my teaching days in which I ruined an entire generation of learners. There was several years where I would exclusively refer to curly braces as mustache brackets. Yeah. And so, like, if we're gonna be doing chaos code, it's gonna be shouty code and mustache brackets throughout.
Okay,
I
so
like the mustache brackets.
I do like calling those mustache brackets. So Arkazi says I'd say just uppercase for the first letter only. That's my personal preference. But it seems like it's a good practice you'd find standard everywhere. I also think we should probably just do a capital. Or just do lowercase first letter and uppercase the rest of the like. Let's just get real weird. I also like Tolga just saying like every other one is upper and lowercase, like really chaos. Yeah, I think it should be something like public stuff should be capitalized, like public accessors should be capitalized specifically, not other public variables. Would they just be lowercase, right?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I did like public float pizza, it would be like that. But yeah, okay, cool.
So
Great.
Actually, at this moment, we got a really great question over in the YouTube chat that I wanted to bring up. So from Isan, these concepts we call our like engineering culture. Is it a requirement when we're working as a solo? So as a solo dev, should you be following all of these rules? What do you think?
I think having conventions is important only because if you've done a lot of solo projects, you know that if you come back to a feature you wrote 6 months ago, and it doesn't follow the same standard coding conventions as what you're using right now, you'd be confused as to like, hey, what is this variable, right? It's not as easy as just take a look at it and I know exactly which variable has kind of what properties associated with it and things like that. So I think having a convention is important in terms of engineering culture. It depends on how you define that, right? Because for me,
Right.
engineering culture is more of how the team works alongside the coding convention. So, like for example, do you do daily stand-ups? Do you do Slack stand-ups? How do you address blockers? How do you handle those things are part of engineering culture, and coding conventions is just kind of a coding style that lets you easily read your code and get the required information without having to dig into it, if that makes sense.
And one of the
Absolutely.
reasons while we're being kind of weird and strict about this for this specific project is we are all going to be working on different timelines. So like we all have like other projects and other things we have to be doing. So like we were talking about this before the stream, like Utsav was like, yeah, I might do some code on like a Saturday morning over coffee, right? Or I was like, yeah, you know, like when my partner's traveling, whatever, I might be doing some work in like the evenings just because I have time to code and I want to, or I might have time during the day. And Joy was kind of sharing similar sentiments. So like there's going to be times where we're going to be writing functions that connect to other things in this code that we're not responsible for. And so establishing these standards allows me to know like what they're doing and why and it makes it easy for me to look at their code they've committed and those types of things. So that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think a lot of people think about these coding conventions as kind of like grammar stuff in like normal writing, and really it's more about making your life easier as a programmer. So whereas like grammar I kind of look more at like making your writing easier for other people to parse. Well, it's kind of like the reverse here. Like obviously other people will read your code more easily, but you specifically will be able to understand what you had written before. Because remember, stick to the 6-month rule. Am I going to understand what this means 6 months from now? And these conventions will help that answer be yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to reuse that. So I'm going to now always say, coding conventions are grammar for your code, because I think that's such an elegant way to put it. And also, Thomas, I'm more of a code over a whiskey sour on Saturday evening kind of guy rather than a coffee on a Saturday morning kind of guy.
That's a fair call. I'm looking forward to those nights.
Is dangerous coding.
Listen, I think every programmer here can attest that they've done this thing where at 10:30 p.m. at night, there's something they're not figuring out and they have a drink in hand and they're just coding away. That's my most focused time when it comes to coding.
Yep.
That's fair.
I do want to add a note. We had a really good YouTube question. Like, can anybody collaborate to make games? Absolutely. Anybody can. That's what we're trying to show. And like, we're 3 coworkers / friends that are going to do this together. Okay. So let's tackle forward on, I guess. So here's a question I want to ask you, y'all, because like at first in my brain I was like, yo, we should be jumping in on like, let's get all of our variable names figured out and like what we're gonna call our stuff. But I feel like that might be too far down the whole rabbit hole right now, and maybe we dial it back to like, let's talk about what the classes are going to be and try to get that laid out a little bit. And then maybe it would be a good idea, as we're building these things out, we can go back and document them inside the TDD. Does that make sense? Like, hey, here's what I named this. This is what these variables do. That type of thing. So we have like some kind of documentation for each other, or is that too much work? What do y'all think?
I think when it comes to kind of TDD details, because variables are something that would probably be more of a living, data flow within the code. So it's hard to document that because you have to keep it extendable. But when it comes to classes and kind of managing the relationship between classes and how they talk to each other and what's what the game manager controls versus what the character controller controls, right? I think those are kind of critical pieces that don't change as much over time, whereas variables are something, that may change over time.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump into like what systems we're going to need then. Systems will need to build. We'll definitely need a monster class. I want to call out a really cool comment from YouTube that I really like to highlight here. From Sandor says, you always work with 3 people when you make a game. You work with yourself 6 months ago, yourself now, and yourself 6 months from now. And you need to make sure to communicate with all of those people. And I love that thought because it's exactly what Joy said, right? Like, you don't know where your mental stack is going to be in 6 months, right? You just don't know.
Yeah.
And you're not going to remember all that stuff. So I love that.
It always reminds me of kind of the popular adage, like, inside yourself there are 2 wolves. Well, inside yourself there are 3 programmers.
And one of those programmers has 2 wolves. So there's really 6 wolves inside ourselves.
There's so
if you're
many
doing
wolves
programmer
inside
math.
you.
We're all chock full of
Binary
wolves.
101.
And each wolf is either a 0 or a 1. Okay, so
Chock
now that
full
we've
of wolves
derailed...
is like, somebody get that on a shirt. Quick.
So one thing before we do jump into systems, I want to talk about is comments. So I think I've mentioned to you both before that I prefer fewer comments and more descriptive coding conventions. So for example, if you're naming your variable, name it descriptive enough that if I were to look at it, I'd be able to tell what the variable is without having to read a comment, right? Like, you don't want to do position, or like rigid body shouldn't be RB, right? Like, in terms of naming conventions. Now I understand comments are an important aspect, so I want to, like, I'd love to talk about kind of where we stand there.
So yes, I am all for making things extremely descriptive. I agree wholeheartedly. I'm sorry, you're going to see some chaos comments. Like, you will. I'm sorry. I will try to be good, but there's gonna be some chaos, and it's gonna be just for you.
Just for me.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to think about it. So I'm a fan of both. I think comments are really important. And I think aptly named variables are appropriate as well. So I think we should try to like have a healthy mix of both, right? Like, as an example, if we grab a rigid body, right? Like, I think all of us are going to know if we say rigid body or rigid, like, so, because you use RB as the reference, right? So I'm sticking to the rigid body example as we debate this, or discuss this. Like, for me, I just expect like rigid body RB. Like, I expect that's what people are going to use because I know RB is like what we all use for rigid bodies. But would you prefer it be rigid, or would you prefer it be like character rigid body? Does that make sense? Like, how descriptive are we talking?
Yeah, I think it should be descriptive enough where if I read it, I shouldn't be, so like, for example, if I know which game object reference it is, and then that's easily laid out in the class, right? I still wouldn't want it rigid or RB. I'd want it like, description of what the class is and rigid body, right? And the reason I say that is because the way I think about it, kind of comments were really great when you couldn't have descriptive variable names because of kind of different restrictions you had on how you coded. But now that we've come to a point where you can name your variables with as much description as you want, including your classes and stuff, I feel like comments become outdated. So the reason I don't like comments is, let's say you build something, you write a comment. When you update your code, you generally don't update the comment. And part of it is user error, right? Where the user is supposed to update the comment. But the way I think about it is like, as much of the user error as you can avoid, force user errors, the better it is, which is personally why I prefer fewer comments. And even then, I still add comments because at some places I think it just makes sense to have comments. But I'm very skeptical about, if I go back and update the code, I have to update the comments. So if we can align on updating comments with code, I'm happy to have any number of chaotic comments in the code.
Cool.
Don't worry, I will constantly be updating my comments. Also, a note that or a thought that I just wanted to float by is, like, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Utsav, where it's like, if we're in the character class, we don't need to say it's the character rigid body. Like, that part would be clear, but still have it descriptive so it's very clear, like, hey, this is the rigid body variable. I wonder if you guys see this too. So, like, for my, like, cacheable variables, like, I do really descriptive names, but if I have to introduce a variable within a method, that's when I go short. That's when I'm going to say RB, because it's just within the method itself, and so it's less important to kind of surface. But again, that's kind of, that's probably not the best practice now that I think about it. If you're working with other people, it works in my head because it's kind of like, once I've tested out that system, it's kind of like sitting on its own. But
I think that's a great point, because you can have helper classes, right, that do specific functions that all different classes can use. So it's like, okay, what does naming convention look like there? Because if you have a function that, say, calculates a sine wave interpolation for 2 characters, right, and
Mhm.
you're building that as a helper function in a helper class, right? So it doesn't belong to any class, and it's just kind of what you refer to. In that case, it doesn't make sense to say character rigid body. You just say, whatever your reference argument passed it dot rigid body, right? Which I think makes a lot
Mhm.
of sense because it's a helper class. So I think, it is a very kind of, I don't know. Every use case is kind of different in terms of how descriptive you can be. Does that make sense?
It's
I think it that way
Yep.
anyway. I might be
it's all
weird.
about context.
Yes.
Yep. And I'm gonna be honest, like I think I'm gonna use some of the Twitch chat input on this one too, like to form my opinion. Because if y'all don't know much about me, I rarely have very strong opinions on things. I'm a pretty easygoing, loosey-goosey kind of human. Everybody in chat is saying like really descriptive method names and really descriptive variable names are the answer. And I think that is absolutely the answer. I also think though we do need to, for the purpose of this project specifically, because we're kind of taking it from the education angle, I think we're going to be a little more commenty than normal as well, because if somebody
Yeah.
who's never used Unity trips across this, I want them to see the comments and be able to work through my code, right? But I agree. I think we need to make sure we name, and I think that's going to be part of the check when we do code reviews, is like we're going to talk to each other about variable namings and that type of stuff, and what does
Yeah.
this do? Why don't I understand it? That type of thing. So
Yeah, and I think one of the critical components of this process is going to be like code reviews as well. And I think, that is going to shed a lot of light on, why we made decisions that way and why, within the review process, one of us wants the other to update or change their code, right? And I think that's going to be a very fruitful exercise as we start building this out.
descriptive comment as necessary. Okay, so that's our rule set then. Variable names need to be descriptive. Actually, well, I'll just say all names need. Should I just say like all naming needs to be descriptive? Comment
No foos.
appropriately. No
And
foos. Yeah,
up-
no
update
foo bars.
comment.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no.
Update
Okay.
comment as you update code. My only
Yeah.
rule with comments.
I agree. Okay. With that, are we comfortable to talk about what systems we're going to need to build?
Systems? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right. So I started our doc with the easy one. Gonna need a game manager, right?
What? No.
And
Shut.
I assume that's gonna manage our game state. It's gonna manage probably the score.
Yep.
This just became a shouty TDD. That's right. We're using shouty case.
Case, yes. Shouty
So we're gonna need
case
to keep,
and
like,
mustache brackets.
Game state, the score.
So here's kind of like an open question. Are there any data points that we're going to need from the multiplayer stuff that will be in the game manager?
I mean, we're gonna need to play. We're gonna need to know the players in the game, right?
I
Well,
would think so.
But that's gonna register to the multiplayer system separately.
Okay, so
That's my
maybe not
understanding as
necessarily.
well.
Well, okay, we're gonna need. So we're tracking an overall score and then the individual score of each player, right? So
Right.
maybe
Right.
there's more details on like the individual player score, but that's it as far as like the multiplayer aspect that goes. on
Yeah,
the
because
game
like I
manager.
feel like all the multiplayer is really gonna need to transmit is. I know. I feel like score is gonna have to be part of the multiplayer situation, right? Because
To be honest, I don't know enough about netcode, so I'm gonna find that out as we build that out. But I don't know enough about netcode as to like,
yeah, because the way I see it is like there's a bunch of stuff we can process at the system level, right? Like we can, like where like monster spawning. Well, no, that's gonna have to be part of the netcode because both games are gonna have to sync with that.
Oh, good point.
So that's the only reason why I think the score would have to sync so that player across the street knows my score and I know their score.
so
Right.
let me ask you a question. Is do we have a single player mode at all?
I would like to, but I
Then-
don't know if that might be
okay.
out of scope.
The reason I ask is we can still keep it within the netcode code, but we'd have to sync it to either the game manager or player controller if we have one, depending on where we put the score. But we'd have to sync it for a single player mode. So depending on if you're having a single player mode or not, just something to keep in mind.
All right. So, but for now, like I think we're safe saying the game manager needs to know the game state, the score, players in the game. It needs to know the enemies in the game, right? Does it need to know the enemies in the game?
No,
Could we have just a dedicated enemy?
Yeah. I
system?
think
Just-
I think we should
yeah.
have an enemy system, and then
Yeah.
we have different types of enemy that kind of
Okay.
inherit from a single enemy.
Hmm.
Yep. Well, but then like we need like an enemy manager, right? Like so that
Yeah.
like something that's gonna like so like when the enemies reach 0, we can spawn a new wave basically.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
But could that be triggered through the game manager?
That's what I was saying. So the game manager would need to know how many enemies are in the game, right? So when the enemies spawn, they would need to register themselves with the game manager,
Right.
just so that the game manager knows whether or not they exist.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm kind of visualizing a wave system already, but still it would play into the game manager. So
We'd also need to know the
Yeah.
time.
I'm generally
The
not
word
a big-
manager needs to be banned.
is the word manager already starting to lose all sense to people? Does that happen to
Yeah.
everybody? Like where you'll use a word enough that it's not real anymore?
It's hard to have a single manager control so many things because your code can
Yeah.
get so messy, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
That's very, very true. So
Um,
maybe should we put a question mark by enemies in the game, and kind of just experiment around and see if the game manager is where we want to put that, or if it's going to be something separate.
Yep. Because there's no reason that like on the time question as well, there's no reason that we couldn't have like a timing system
Yeah.
that just tells the game manager to change state, right? And then we can take
Yeah.
that out of the game manager, and so the game manager is not 500 lines of code or 10,000 lines of code, right? We can
Yeah.
we could just be like, yo,
Yeah.
10,000 lines of code in 7 weeks. Let's go.
let's do it. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Sorry, y'all.
Maybe
Don't put that much
ChatGPT
faith in
will do
us.
it for us.
It'll be nonsense code, but it'll still be 10,000 lines.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll need a master enemy class, right? And then the other enemies will inherit from that, obviously.
Mhm.
Enemy class. So this will be the enemy base class.
So, quick question: has anybody worked with entities? Is that way out of scope for us?
I think it's out of.
Out of scope.
Okay.
Out of scope.
Fair.
I have worked with entities, but not in the 1.0 version. I haven't worked with entities since before lockdown. It's been 4 or 5 years since I've touched
Yeah.
ECS.
Fair. Yeah.
Enemy base class.
Look, you found my fear. It's
Yeah.
clowns and ECS.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do it, but I think that would be like an out of scope thing. Like if we had more time to figure it
Yeah.
out. we'd
No,
be
that's a
good.
scope check moment. But
Yep.
I needed
Yep.
to bring it out.
No, I appreciate it. No, I appreciate that a lot. I think it could do, especially if we want to get really heavy with the waves of enemies, we could do some really sick optimization stuff with that, which would be really fun. So we have an enemy based class. We're gonna need an AI. Someone said we're gonna need an AI manager. I feel like the enemy class can handle that. Like the enemies can handle their own navigation because we're gonna use nav meshes, right?
Yeah, because the nav mesh agent is gonna like do most of the heavy lifting, so we're only gonna
Yeah.
need a couple references.
Yeah. We'll need a UI manager of some sort. Do you like to use UI managers? I like to use a UI manager.
I do.
I know,
Yeah.
like, Utsav, we talked about this off stream, so this might be good to bring up on the conversation of using like an event. How'd you describe it? Like an event-based system versus like a lot of singletons?
Yeah.
Um,
And like using interfaces and events, but
Yeah.
I haven't used that before. But I'd be willing to try it. I have both of you done a lot of UI before?
I've done
A
quite a
moderate
bit, but
amount?
I usually just have like a UI manager with
Yeah.
events that can be triggered from like the system that needs it. Is usually how I do it.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's also the new UI system we have. What's that called? I keep forgetting.
Oh,
Scope check.
Scope
It's
check.
very cool. I'm super excited about it, but I think it's still new enough that we're going to be trying to like debug and understand the system. Like it's going to take too much time.
Yeah.
So as
It's
cool as
called-
as it is.
UI
It's called
Toolkit.
UI Toolkit, yeah.
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 But honestly, I think it's way quicker than UI managers. So I'm happy to take on UI and use UI Toolkit because from my understanding,
Cool.
a couple of days should be more than enough to build out at least our base UI with it. So I'm happy to take that. And
Okay.
you know, if it becomes a scope check moment, then lessons
We can
learned for our next
roll
stream.
back.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Deal. All right, so game manager, enemy based class. We're gonna need a player class, right? And I assume we're gonna separate our character movement and our player class. So like movement will just handle movement. The player class will handle like the health and that type of stuff.
So a character controller and then a kind of
Yeah.
player class, yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, we're gonna need some kind of scene management, right? Because I assume, are we gonna do? Are we gonna have a separate title scene that then loads into the gameplay, or are we just gonna use like a single scene system where we just pull up the like where we can pause the background, pull it up, set states?
So, I think both are valid. I think this is more of a design choice than a technical choice. So do you guys aesthetically have a preference?
No.
Not really.
I kind of like. Well, okay, and also thinking about the destination, since this is going to be WebGL, it'll probably be lighter to just have it be a single scene. Because then you don't have to worry about loading multiple scenes and that sort of thing.
But then we'd also have to make sure we get rid of any there's no kind of ghost objects in the scene, because they will pile up if it's a single scene and we're not unloading the scene. We just got to make sure we
Right.
clean up our objects if we use a single scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Which is
do you wanna
fine.
just-
I don't think that's a big problem. It's just something to keep in mind depending
Yeah,
on
I mean-
the approach we take.
Actually, thinking about it from that angle, like maybe we just do a start scene and jump into it from there. Like, I think that does make things lighter to work with, because like the start scene will be really light and easy to build.
And don't forget that we're actually, maybe it is a good idea to do a separate scene, because we are also going to have to do like, we're going to have something dedicated to setting up the multiplayer, like finding like whether you input code or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we make separate scenes for this then?
Okay, cool. So we'll say so we'll
Then
need some
you'll
kind
have
of
a
a
scene
scene
manager.
manager.
Yeah.
Somebody asked us, will our only managers singletons? Yes. I think the only time we'll use a singleton are going to be for our managers. We want to keep, so I 3 to 4 singletons at most, I think, in this project, maybe 5. I don't know. Let's see. 70. We'll have
see.
70 singletons. Everything's a singleton.
I'm
you know
out.
what? I've never seen a player class that didn't deserve to be a singleton. This is
What up,
incorrect
Mufasa?
information. Do not believe what I just said. Do not
Yep.
take me out of context. That is wrong. It is wrong.
I like Bananager from Stay Thirsty. We'll start calling them all Bananagers. Man,
Bananager's
Mufasa, you're my
excellent.
brother. All right, so see, Tom Rotel doesn't use singletons at all, so we can see a way to do it without too. So, if everything is a singleton, use ECS. No, we're full circle. No, I would love to do a game with ECS. Maybe maybe a future scope check.
Yeah,
We'll see.
I
But
would
for
also.
now, let's get through making a game in 8 weeks to see how that goes.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna have our enemy-based class, UI toolkit, player class, character controller. We're gonna need a food class to control like our foods.
That's my favorite
Um,
class. That's my favorite class.
It's a great
Food
class.
class.
Oh man, I wish I could go to food school. You just
doing-
eat foods, just different
Wait,
foods all the
so
time.
What would the food class do? Can we? talk
So
about
that it would be the foods. It would like how much hunger do they
damage.
reduce?
Yeah.
It would make them move.
I guess yeah,
forward.
hunger reduce, not damage. They're not damage.
hunger reduction.
Satisfied.
The archetypes of the
Um,
foods. There's only 2 food archetypes. There's just single hit foods and
Multi-hit. Yeah.
bomb foods.
Okay.
I think it would move it forward, or we could probably just make a move forward class that just moves stuff forward, sets velocity. Like, actually, I already wrote a script when I was making the pizza bomb called set object velocity that just like sets the object's velocity and direction, and it already has an enum to pick the direction. It's kind of fun. I got a little ahead of myself last week with the pizza explosion. I'm not gonna lie, y'all.
It looks
So-
dope though.
Yeah, it
Needs
does.
a little
It's
more
really
work.
cool.
It looks all right though. Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
We
about
got a
it.
question over in the YouTube chat from
Ooh.
G Tony. Would it work to base both enemy and player on a character-based class that handles health, damages, and so on?
Ooh,
It's a good
I
question.
like that.
Yeah.
And then we could just have it like we could just have an enum to delineate are they a player or an enemy.
Mhm.
And then based on that, we could do checks, right? Like on how damage is calculated and stuff. I actually really, really like that.
I mean, instead
That's
of
clean.
enum, would you think it would make more sense to kind of have an inherited class for different characters? So have a base character class with all the basic
Yeah.
kind of things, and then you inherit kind of player and enemy, and then you have inherit.
I like that a lot. Let's actually do that. I'm going to change that. So we're going to have a character class. And then that character class we'll have an enemy and a player based on that, right? Yep. I love that.
I
So
also
Sever actually has. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna point that out as well. Is to composite
Yeah.
classes don't inherit them, and I totally see a valid point there, but I think with our scope, inheritance is not going to cause a lot of complexity in code. But with a bigger game, I can totally see that being a big concern. Sorry,
Yep.
Joy, go ahead. You had
Oh,
something to say
no,
about it too.
yeah, that was exactly what I was going to call out. And just for reference, what we're referring to here is in the YouTube chat, Sandor actually responded to G Tony and said it would, but it's a bad idea. Do not derive classes like that. Composite them, don't inherit them. And yeah, just to what Utsav was saying, like our scope is so tiny. Like we're literally talking about two player, or not even player types, two types, right? An enemy and a player.
Yep.
So since the scope is so small, inheriting isn't really inherently dangerous.
By the way, big shout out to Lana Lux dropping the hot rate at 282 people. Welcome to the
Woo!
Chaos Realm. We're here to make a game in 8 weeks. So glad you are here. She rolled right in for the inheritance pun. Ooh, someone wrote, do we need a camera controller? I think the answer is kind of. Our camera's going to be relatively fixed. Something that I do want to do is add some like, and this is going to be polished stuff, but I think it would be really fun like when the pizza detonates to have the camera do a little wiggle. Little juicy wiggle.
So that's actually pretty easy to handle through scripts. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Could you repeat that wiggle again, Tom?
So we call it the juicy wiggle.
Increase it by 15%?
Okay.
Man, that's too much. That's too much. No, that's too much. 12%. Let's scale it back down to 12.
Oh, and can we have a little bit of yaw, please? Very. I
wasn't sure how to do yaw. Someone just said, "Wait, the pizza detonates." Oh, it detonates. So yeah,
all pizza ultimately detonate.
All pizza ultimately detonates. So it's gonna be really fun. So okay, so we've got. So I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna expose myself here. I am not fully understanding what we mean when we're saying let's do it via composition, via inheritance versus. I already forgot what the other word was for Mama Wiggling. So what do you mean by that? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, let's play Educate Tom real quick.
Utsav?
So inheritance, I think it generally causes coupling, right? Because each of the properties that you're creating composite is like you're trying to decouple a lot of things between classes. So, when you're scaling a project, if you have everything coupled, each change requires like an update to a lot of boilerplate code, right? You have to update your base class, you have to update your inherited class. With a composite class, it's a lot easier to kind of scale your code and make changes to your code where since each class has a specific purpose which is decoupled from other classes, you can just adjust a single class rather than having to kind of like figure out where the relationships are between classes, what needs to be updated, are you missing anything, those kinds of things. That's a basic way to describe it.
You're talking about just getting a reference to the thing instead of inheriting from it is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you could use interfaces, right, for composite classes to talk to each other, which is generally a better way to build, I think, a more complex system. In general, I would 100% agree. There's a YouTube channel, a shout out to that. It's called Code Aesthetics. I would highly recommend kind of watching through some of their stuff, and they explain it way better than I could.
Perfect. No, I appreciate that. I actually would really like to use interfaces if we can, because I've never had to code with interfaces before. And so for me, that would be a fun challenge / learning adventure. So I would like to do that.
Yeah, I think something we can talk about during code review, and maybe if we build it through singletons or references, we can maybe walk through like, okay, what would an interface and a composite class would look like, and do we have time to implement that for a future class that we're trying to do. Yeah.
Cool. Real quick, so that all the Lana Lux folks that just joined in know about us, what we're doing. So we're building a game together from a purpose of education, right? So we're spending 8 streams together trying to get a project out. It's a hyper casual game that's going to basically give us throwing food at monsters inside of a cafeteria is kind of the general rub of it. And we're going to do this every week at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're so glad you're here. You caught us in the middle of our technical design conversation. So we're actually just figuring out like what classes we need to build, how to angle things. And then next week, we're actually going to start rubber to the road coding. We should have some classes put together and hammered out next week. And then we're actually going to do some live coding together as we build things out. Someone asked, this game going to be 2D or 3D? It's going to be a 3D isometric. And it's going to be kind of like a twin stick shooter, but instead of shooting, you're throwing foods at zombos and skeletons.
It's a twin stick thrower.
Yeah, twin stick thrower. There you go. Twin stick thrower. So yeah, there we go. Give me one quick thing here. And we'll get going to this, and then we'll tackle it straight away. From there, we're going to tackle all of our projects. So now we've got this all set up. We've got our classes kind of. Someone asked if we're going to make a health class. I don't think we need a health class because I feel like
this actually brings up a really important point that I don't necessarily have clear in my mind. So we've got our enemies coming towards us. We're throwing our food at them. What happens when they reach us? Is that a health situation? Like what is the end state? How do we lose?
You die and you lose.
your health goes to 0.
Okay, so then we need a health class.
Yep.
I mean, do we need a health class, or can health be a property of characters? Because all of our enemies
That's what I
and
was thinking.
players, yeah.
Because then we can basically define that. Because if we're using a character class, like if we're going to use inheritance, the character class can just have like a health variable, and then it can click in and link between the two, right? And we can tackle it from there.
Yeah.
Oh, and and they will definitely eat us. And yes, we will be programming between the week off and on to get stuff done, because that's the only way we're going to get this done in 8 weeks. And then we'll do code reviews together and stuff too, and then code live. So health as a property then, or health as a class?
I think health is a property. At least we should start there, I would say. And then if things don't work out, or if we feel we need health as its own class, then we should make it a class.
Okay.
So wait, does that mean that in this 2-player game, one player can die before the other?
Yes.
Is that how we want it?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean,
Just making sure.
we are keeping individual scores, so, you know.
We are, but I thought that was more of a like kind of like, oh, just like a little factoid that you see at the end, and like the game ends when the cafeteria falls to the monsters.
Right, but wouldn't the cafeteria fall when both players go down? I guess like I'm not.
Oh,
sure,
I see. So like,
yeah.
Okay, and it becomes so much more overwhelming because it's just one person against all the waves of enemies. Okay, so I get it. That makes sense in my mind. Cool.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's see if any other classes we got to think about. So game manager, character class, UI toolkit, player class. Oh, UI toolkit's not a class. We're just going to use that for UI. So
Yep.
I'll delete that out of our list right now. Character controller, scene manager, food class.
Do we need any HUD to display scores while playing?
Yes, we'll need a UI manager. UI bananager for the chat.
Manager.
Bananager.
I think
I think that's good.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
Well, okay, let's think about the game. So we've got our players running around. So our players, we have the character class, or the player class. We have the character controller, so they're doing their own thing. Then we have the enemies coming in, so that means that we have our enemy class. And they're coming in, we're throwing food at them. The food is making their health or satisfaction go down or go up. And then if they reach the player, their health is going down. They're going to be moving via navigation, which will be in the enemy class. I think we've probably covered all. Ooh, so what about game settings?
All right, so I think for the first vertical slice, that's a bit of a stretch. But I do think being able to like adjust audio volume. I know we talked about accessibility in our design meeting yesterday. Like, can we set up some kind of spawn manager? I almost forgot that. To manage our spawning.
Whoopsies.
Thank you, chat. Big shout out to GameDevX for giving us that. And
So
I think game settings could be really helpful because we even talked about doing like some kind of Uber shader that would do like a high contrast mode.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But does game settings need to be a class? It could just be a set of variables through a config. Like, do we need a class for that? We could just have UI kind of change configuration through a JSON config file or some settings configuration file. We could even keep a scriptable object for those variables that stay in the game. Like,
actually, no, we should do a scriptable object for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, but I think it's important to call out, especially at this point here, even though it's slightly unrelated, we are definitely thinking about settings and accessibility. We want to make sure that this is widely playable as possible. So we are definitely going to address that, even though typically it's considered, more at the end of a production. It's actually really important to think about accessibility really early on, so that way you can kind of fold it into your production timeline. Yeah. So we are going to include that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus one.
All right. I'm reading chat. Says, stuff we're missing here. Someone's saying an entity manager, asset folder. Someone's saying a struct. We could use a struct for stuff. Yeah, that'd work. Game settings, spawn manager. I feel like this would get our game I think this will get us a vertical slice, right?
Wait, do we have a network manager?
Nope.
Oh, whoopsie, kind of important.
All right. Now that'll get us a vertical slice.
And just to preface it, I don't know if netcode requires a network manager or kind of how we build it, but we'll find out. That's just kind of the assumption I'm going to run on, or we should run on, till we find otherwise.
Cool.
I also want to call out over in Twitch. We had a very important note from Dunku. We need scripts. Just so y'all know, we will need scripts.
We will need scripts. You're right. Yeah, I'm just going to put those right here, actually. I'm just going to type.
Yeah.
I also but somebody said who's going to be making art. So most of the art we're going to be used is going to be we're using mostly Kenny and L assets, and then we're going to use some assets from Unity Learn because we work for Unity Learn, so we can do that. Yeah. Yep. So we're going to that's how we're going to come up with our assets, and then we might try to make our own if we have time, but right now we're trying to use this. Ooh, we need an audio manager. Thank you.
Oh, yes, very good. Yes, very important. Okay. But yeah, so the asset pack that we got from Kenny is going to take us a very long way because it's so massive.
It's so good.
So there's probably going to be very little that we'll need to make from scratch.
Yeah.
Which is a really great way of handling our time crunch here, right? So because we don't have to be spending all this time actually making assets, it's really going to help us out here.
Yep.
Yeah, making assets is a very time-intensive exercise it comes to game dev, and the attention to detail you need and things like that. And I think in 8 weeks, it's a scope check moment if we wanted to do a lot of custom art that we wanted to build ourselves.
Someone's asking, is the player character always the same, or is it configurable in some way? I think configurable is the end goal. I think to start, though, it's going to be the same character with a different skin. It's going to be very basic to start us off.
Yeah.
So I think we should get a little bit of clarity on that. Is it that they're going to be configurable, or will they be able to select different models? Because to me, configuration implies different skills, different speed variable, that sort of thing. Or is it just going to be here's model type A, model type B, model type C?
It's not going to be different skill sets. I don't think we have time to do a class system.
We do not.
I think it's really going to be you pick what you look like.
Hey, you know what we could do? We could update colors on each models as well. So if they wanted to kind of try just colorize their own characters, I think that's a fairly easy thing to add.
Yep.
And we'll have to have some element of that in case our two players actually choose the same character anyway. We'll have to have some way of identifying who's who on screen.
Yeah.
So it's very easy just to add a overlay color on the material.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, how player progression will be managed. So player progression, I think we're going to manage through mostly the player class and the game manager, right? Because player progression is really just, for this purpose, is their score. How much foods has they thrown, and how much ammunition do they have on them. Actually, do we need to make a class to manage that? Or should that be part of the player?
No, I think our scope is small enough that can stay in the player. And again, I do want to stress this. We're not thinking of it from a scalability point of view. We're thinking of it from, we need to make this in 8 weeks, and we're making a vertical slice. And so I do want to preface it by saying that some of these may not be the most scalable solutions you've seen, right? Like these many managers and this much coupling of classes, but it's a quick way to build a game.
Yeah, and I think what we should do is make it a habit to flag when we're going through code and say, hey, we're doing it for this reason. But ideally, if it's a larger production, you should do it this way. I think that'll be a really good way of kind of aligning a bigger production with a smaller production. Also, I want to call out that in the YouTube chat, Dante gave us a really great tip about Unity netcode. So he says, that Unity netcode comes with its own manager. However, you need to integrate the network behavior into all of your scripts to make use of its features.
Okay, cool. Good tip there. Thank you, Dante.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, someone said probably not great for beginner game, but have you ever used like scriptable object framework? I mean, if you mean like using scriptable objects in general as like a
Regularly,
framework to
all the
define
time,
stuff, I use it
love
all the time. I
Yeah.
love them. I think they're great.
They're really
And
good.
honestly, like I think for a character definition, especially when you have like a class system, scriptable objects are so nice because then you can just store all that data and anyway. Okay.
And if you combine scriptable objects with Odin, you could have little preview images, and I love it so much.
Oh, I love this. So someone asked a question. Never apologize for asking a question. It can be a new question. That's why we're here. What is a vertical slice? So a vertical slice is like as much of a complete shippable piece of your experience as you can get. That's just like a very tight, succinct level. I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it. So like, this is essentially like for us, like a really, really high quality prototype. Like we want it to be something we can take and say like, boom, this is what we're diving into. This is what we're building. This is what the game is about. A beta. Great. Yeah, exactly. It's a beta, essentially.
One key difference I would note is prototype is generally, it's okay to throw away code. Vertical slice, you're building with the intent of building on top of it because you already have a vertical slice. So that's the major difference between what a vertical slice is and what a prototype is.
Oh, Stay Thirsty is actually really like correct here over in the Twitch chat. A vertical slice is a standing pizza. That is absolutely.
I can't believe I missed a time to make a pizza joke. Thank you, Stay Thirsty, for keeping me on track. That was like served right up for me, hot and ready, and I missed it. I am so upset. All right, so we are in the last part of what we need to do today. I think we've tackled as much stuff as we can. And honestly, like, I just feel like y'all in the chat are probably like, I am so tired of looking at them just like argue over a Google Doc. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pick who's doing what. So it's job time. It's time to assign our gerbs.
So before we jump into that, should we think about what needs to be done in what order? Because, UI is something that can wait till the end. I don't need to start on it right now. So it's like, what is the order? And then we can go into who wants to do what.
Let's prioritize. Okay. So I think somebody needs to put together a basic level for us to build into to test stuff. Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there's no level, then how we make game?
Right.
So maybe a better way to put this is to set up basic environment for the game, which includes, I think, a scene, and we can list out what other things we need, right? Because we need a character player, a character controller, even a most basic farm.
Yeah.
And those are two basic things. I don't know if there are other things that are like just very base level so that we can actually start building the game.
Yep. So we're just gonna need to have a scene put together, right? A scene that we're working on. Is that what you're getting at? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was reading chat, so my brain kind of shifted gears. I apologize. It's off.
No, you're all good. You're all good.
So we're gonna need to pick a scene layout. I can commit to that, since I have the most available time to commit to this project. That cool?
Works for me.
Okay. My gosh, look at all these documents. Okay, boom, that's my job. Scene layout. Okay, so from there, we're going to need a character controller, right? So what are we going to need then from there? What's next?
So I think first and foremost, we need to be able to see the enemies moving about, and then the player being able to move as well. But the player aspect has the netcode piece, which is scary and unknown.
So do the enemies. So we need like some kind of netcode test.
I think netcode's up on the list.
Really? Because like, could we just build out the character controller
and then tie it all in?
Yeah, and then tie it all in. Especially with listening to what we heard from Dante about netcode coming with its own manager and just integrating network behavior into existing classes. It sounds to me like we can build out our kind of structure and framework for the game and then add network behavior to it.
Okay, I see. So kind of approach it as like, at least for this week, as like a one-player game. And then very quickly, like maybe next week is when we bring in netcode.
Yeah, one thing that would be a concern for me is like, I don't know about you two, but I'm new to netcode. So if we need more time to kind of get acquainted with netcode and make sure we're doing it the right way, it might be better to start it off early just for those reasons. But I don't know where you guys stand, because I don't think it's like a one-off thing.
So I think enemy sounding and player. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joy.
Oh, I was just agreeing. The earlier the better, because I also am not familiar, which says to me that we will need time to study.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're gonna need our character class built first.
And it doesn't have to be complete. We just need the
That's
basics.
Just
Yeah.
basic. Yep.
Yep.
And then we're gonna need a character controller. And then we're gonna need enemy spawning and enemy AI. I think we can do enemy AI before enemy spawning, right? Because we can get the enemy object like ready and moving around,
sitting
and
there,
then worst case scenario, we can have a demo with like 5 enemies in there that we're throwing food at and testing on before we do the rest of it there.
Yep.
Though enemy spawning is so simple, I think it could definitely be done in the same like attack phase as creating the enemy AI.
I
As
also
is.
see a question in Twitch chat: which render pipeline will be used? URP.
We're using
URP,
URP. I don't know if there's like a technical reason for that. Again, I think it just we want this to be reached available on as many platforms as possible and have a lot of easy optimization options is why I jumped on URP.
Well, a technical reason also is that WebGL is kind of a lightweight, platform, and URP kind of is our Uber render pipeline for those kinds of platforms. It just makes sense. It's easy. It works. It's performant.
Cool. So so we're using URP. Yep. Okay. So I guess who's going to work on the character class?
I can take it, or Joy can take it. What do you want to do, Joy?
Yeah. What?
I am fine with either. So if you have a preference, definitely.
So what are our other options?
So we've got to do. So the character class is going to encapsulate like the enemy and the player. So we're going to need a character controller. We're going to need enemy spawning. We're going to need to stub up a game manager.
Are we using the new input
yes
package?
Yes.
Please.
I haven't used
Absolutely.
it.
It's free.
It's real nice.
You'll love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to take the controller then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll add a note there for you. I've worked with the new input system quite a bit. I really like it's really nice. It is so nice.
Yeah, I've heard, and I'm looking forward to learning it. I haven't, for viewers who probably didn't tune in last week, I used to be a game developer, but it's been about 18 months since I've done any development, and I'm looking forward to kind of start fresh in the sense of like learn new things and systems that Unity has probably added since then, and I am not completely unaware of. So it's going to be a great learning experience.
So I'll just notate that, and we can update these documents here. So that way, so I would say then spawning game manager. Oh wait, why do I have the character class twice? Y'all, I'm getting too documenty.
You were copy and pasting.
That's what that. And then character controller is there.
I guess I'll take the player class or the character class rather.
All right, you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm using my personal email here, so I don't have your emails to tag you, so I'll do that after the stream. Oh yes, we will definitely. Oh yeah, we will definitely be adding polish to this game if there's time. I definitely want to do like a really nice post processing and like camera pass to make things look really cool. Okay, scene manager. I can take the scene manager. I think.
Cool.
Actually, can I take the food class?
But it's food class first week. Is food class first week? I don't think so.
I don't think it's first week.
Yeah. So how about you reconvene in next week?
Okay. We also have to pick something to write live on stream next week. So I guess, chat, what do you want to see us write live? Because we're going to do some live coding next week. What should we actually build? Like, what would be the thing we should build next week?
That's great. Tell us what you'd like to see. Also, while you guys are deciding what you'd like us to see live, we've got a great question over in the YouTube chat from Andy. Are we going to be posting this doc somewhere?
Yes. We are. I don't know where. I actually have it set up so anybody with the link can view it.
So
right
Google
now.
Docs also have a publish button.
That's right. Yeah.
We should start doing that. We need to start publishing it to like a URL or something for people to see.
We'll find an answer for you guys, and we will post links next week for sure. But also, do we want to like tweet this stuff out? How do we want to?
Yeah, I can share it on my Twitter. And then. So like, I'm happy to put it.
Can we also pin it in our YouTube comments? Because we have a YouTube VOD, and we can pin it as like the first comment in a YouTube VOD.
I like that a lot. We can. I think Hassan, who would control that, just left, but I'm pretty sure we can do that. I can talk to him about that, so we can put that in the comments of the YouTube VOD, so you have access to it too.
Yep.
Okay. So most of the requests for live coding next week has been. Someone saying main core game loop. You need to build a main core game loop first. Yeah, I agree for the most part. Yeah.
We're gonna kind of end up getting there.
Yeah.
We will have the components that we'll build into the loop.
We can post it in the Unity Discord too.
Yeah.
Real quick question.
Great.
We can post it in the Discord as well. We can drop it there. In the main Unity Discord. I think we have a command for that. Also, okay, sorry, I'm getting off track. So most of the people in chat are saying they want to see the game manager live next week.
Okay.
It's the vibe I'm getting. I've seen game manager. Someone said anything that moves,
yeah.
so we could definitely like look at how navmesh. We can even review how the navmesh works and how we set that up. That's a pretty quick 5-10 minutes.
I mean, we'll review like everything that we wrote, so we'll cover that. Also, anything that moves. Well, Thomas moves. Wiggle, 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 wiggle.
Yeah,
Thomas.
To share y'all some of my favorite one of my favorite YouTube videos about the Badger car salesman. He's so funny. All right, so we got a character class, Joy, Utsav, yeah. We're gonna do this live on stream. Except for I spell stream like strum, live on strum.
Strum.
Scene manager, do we need to worry about scene manager yet? I feel like we can put that off a week.
I think we can put that off a week, maybe even longer.
UI manager, probably week 3.
Yeah.
Spawn manager, week 3. Game settings, audio manager, we can do that week 3. And game settings week 3.
Like some of these finer tuned settings, we could even possibly push off to week 4. But like, let's just play it by ear now, and just obviously we could
and
adjust things.
Just to confirm, when we say week 3 from now, or week 3 of stream?
Oh, you're right. Week 3 from now, so we should probably say week 4. I don't know how numbers work.
Are we talking about weeks inclusive or exclusive?
We're getting...
Sorry,
no.
See, these things, they end up confusing you when you come back to it, next week. You're like, we're in week 3. Are we behind schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah. As we've had some people saying they would love to see netcode live as well. I would love... legitimately, like, I think depending on how far down the rabbit hole we get... we might just need to do like a dedicated netcode stream, and we'll see how it goes, because I really want to make it happen. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it would be really cool to show how to use documentation to kind of learn new Unity systems, right? Because netcode is something that's new to all of us, and I think understanding and reading documentation is a big part of learning softwares like Unity in order to build the game that you want to build. So to me, that sounds like a great opportunity.
Yep.
Agreed.
All right, we need to set up... Oh, I can't do it live from this machine. We need to set up an Airtable with all of our tracking.
You say.
No
yeah,
Jira?
so we're going to need to do that. I don't have access to that on this computer I'm working on, though. So maybe we could do that next week. Like, I can do that on the break, and then we can talk about it next week and show, like, our Kanban board and how we've set everything up for deadlines. Is that cool?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Cool. Oh, I like this question. So this is kind of a bigger question, but someone says, how do you decide what needs to be split into scenes? I haven't done my scene manager, but I'm debating just one super scene. It's a simple game, but curious. I think it depends on what your game is about and how much content you need to move around, right? Because I've even seen really cool split ups. Like, I was helping on a project and they had their lighting in one scene. And then they had their environment in one scene. So they have these scene layers almost of different stuff. It depends on what makes sense for your game. I think for this game, because it's such a small context, it's kind of a which one would we rather just do?
Yep. And I'll just add some context to it. I can name what games, but I've, in the past couple of years, worked on 2 different games. One followed the exact same structure that you mentioned, where it's lighting gets built in one scene and meshes in another and those kinds of things. And then the other game, these are 2 very well-known games. I can't speak about them, but the other game, the whole game was a single scene. And that was a pretty large game, so that made optimization for that game very difficult, because when you have so many objects in a single scene, it's a nightmare. And then how you do LODs and things like that also become tricky. So while it's dependent on your game, I will say that if it's a large scale game, figuring out what different scenes you have would be helpful rather than a single uber scene. But if it's a small game, then it's just up to you, whatever feels comfortable and quick for you to do.
I have an example that I can talk about, just because it's one of my own games that hasn't been released yet, unfortunately. But it is a game where every object in the scene is destructible, and it's it takes place in an office building. So what I ended up doing is I had each little office room as its own level, and then I did additive loading. And so with it, if it is in with the scope of the camera, like the levels were loaded, otherwise they would unload. And the reason why I did that was for optimization purposes, because since everything is literally destructible in each room, it becomes kind of an optimization nightmare if an entire office block is all loaded in. So rather than dealing with thousands of destructible items, you go down and each room maybe has 100 things at max, depending on the size of the room. So visually, it looks like you're playing in one scene, but really, like, the first level, I think, has like 20 scenes in it. And it's just so much more optimized that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I love additive scene loading. I think it's a great way to kind of get around some of these problems.
There's a really cool example of that. If you look at the, I think it's the FPS sample, where you're shooting the viruses.
Yes,
that uses
that-
additive
it
scene
does have
loading to build out different. Cause it's really, and it's all like trigger based basically. Like you walk into a volume, the volume sets off a command. Oh, you're within range. Boom, and it pops. It's really eloquent. It's really cool.
Ooh, I have to check that out now.
Yeah, it's a really great sample.
Dope. So we've had some people recommend some other stuff for project management. Someone brought up something called Codex, which is a project management just for game dev. We'll take a look at it in the off season and see how we do. Somebody asked, like, how do you merge scenes together? Oh yeah, it's just with load scene additive. Like two scenes can coexist inside the Unity editor on top of each other. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff there. So I think we've got a good starting point. So next week we're going to work on Game Manager. We're going to jump into getting all that together. We'll get our code kind of laid out and getting things all pulled together. If we can figure out how to do a multi-scene type layout to show y'all, we can poke at that. But again, everything we have to do for the next 8 weeks has to be scope checkable. We got to make sure that we keep everything scope checkable. And to be fair, I haven't seen a tutorial on Learn about multi-scene integration. But Joy, you might know better than me. If there's tutorials on like using like multiple scenes with different layers.
It's been such a long time. I'm trying to remember if we have something on that.
Yep.
And my brain isn't processing the vast library of Learn right now off the top of my head. So
There's a tutorial called Managing Projects with Multi-Scene Editing.
Okay.
I don't know what that
Okay.
entails.
So we can take a look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're good there. We know what we got to do when we walk away. We'll probably have like a follow-up chat on Monday to make sure everybody's in line. Well, next week's going to be so busy. I've got code reviews and this. Oh, it's going to be wild. It's going to be so fun. Okay. So I think we're at a good place to kind of wrap things up and call it. Like I said, some of these streams might be a little bit longer, but we're really shooting for the 1 to 2 hour mark. We're not trying to do 12-hour dev streams and give you all your lives back.
We've got real jobs, y'all.
So I'm told. I'm told I have a job and I need to do work. So we're good here. We're set. Thank you all so much for going on this journey of designing this with us. We hope you all see that, like, we're not trying to approach this from the angle of we're just going to capture everything and do it all perfectly. We're taking this from the angle of, like, let's figure it out together. Let's dive into this thing and see what we do and how things work. Yeah. And we're going to tackle it. Got some beard compliments. Sure appreciate it. Joy's cat is incredibly silent this entire chat, which is actually really fun.
He is snoring. Like, I guess my mic isn't sensitive enough to pick it up, which is for the best, but he has been snoring for the last half hour.
Someone asked how much is scripted. Y'all, seriously, like, this is completely unscripted. We just showed up today with our design doc and started working.
Literally.
We'll see how the rest of it goes. We might have to script ourselves a little bit, but all right. Oh, someone just resumed pet the dog. I assume the dog is the cat. So that being said,
Cat page.
distance pet. We're all set here. Thank you all so much for coming through and enjoying the show. Again, follow the Twitch channel. That's how you're gonna get notifications. We're gonna keep doing this. It's every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We've got 6 of these left. We might extend it beyond that depending on time and stuff, but we're committing to 8 and taking it from there. You can find Utsav and I on Twitter at Thomas Winkley, at Utsav Jamal. Find Joy on Instagram, the Joy of Game Dev. And yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out and giving us amazing feedback. I don't enjoy Utsav. If you have any final stuff you want to say,
just, continue visiting with us and, playing along. You're helping us out so much. Like, seriously, you're part of the dev team too.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's so exciting to see such an engaged chat.
Stoked, yeah.
I'm really excited to build this out.
Hope you're all ready to tell us how to code next week. So get your
Yeah,
code and
next
brains
week's
ready.
where things get messy.
All right, we'll see y'all next week.